Good evening, everyone. What a lovely evening. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I just feel like before I get started, I just want to thank the production team, right? I feel like they are the team behind the scenes that is making this all happen, last minute getting the presentation done. So thank you so much to the production team. So first of all, extremely happy to be here. My name is Shyam Tyagaraj. I am with Accenture. We are a professional services company that operates in about 49 countries. And for me, this is just a great honor to be here with all of you. And let me set the stage on why we are talking about this topic. So last year at Out and Equal, we had our amazing partners from CVS Health. And we talked about an important initiative we are working with CVS Health on health equity. So at the end of that session, one of the audience members asked a question that basically said, all of this is great for salaried workers, but for how do we think about inclusion and diversity for our hourly workers? Right, I think that prompted us to spend the last year really thinking about what would that look like, and actually have this session where you'll hear from some esteemed experts on what does that mean, so you can walk away with a few ideas for your organization. Right, so if I just looked at some statistics, there is about 83 million hourly workers in the US, which is close to 55 to 58% of the total US workforce. Right? So therefore, if we truly want to create inclusive environments, I think we have to recognize that hourly workers face some very unique challenges, face some very unique situations and context, and we have to tailor our messages and make sure that it resonates with essentially more than half of the total US workforce. So that's what we're going to talk about. I am the moderator. I am going to be joined by a very esteemed panel who will walk up to stage with some amazing music. Right. All right. I think this is a photograph of me. This is the only headshot I have. It does not look like me at all. But I can assure you I was once looking like this when I met my husband. All right, so we'll start with each of you. If you could quickly introduce yourself, your name, pronoun, your day job, your role in the ERG, and some everyday superpower you bring to work. We'll start with you, Thomas.
Well, absolutely. Good evening, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Thomas McCarthy. I am with Marriott International and serve as a learning and development manager for our consumer operations group. Thrilled to be the co-chair of ONE, which is our LGBTQ plus ARG, along with my friend and colleague, Travis Peterson.
All right.
Well, I don't know if I can follow
yes,
that. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in this world. My name is Shantae Rothschild. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. My day job, I work for CVS Health, and I work for a team that is responsible for managing the federal government's pharmacy programs. So 5 million members, Marines, military, federal, whatever you do, if you are a federal worker, thank you for your service and your dedication. Go CVS Health. My day job is I am one of 3 co-chairs for CVS Health's colleague resource groups. So Pride Plus, joined here by Jason and several others, including Justin, who are on that national team. And my superpower, I am really good at connecting people, finding people who do amazing work. Many of you here today, we've had the opportunity to chat, and so that's my superpower, connecting people.
Thank you, Shantae.
My name is Justin Ellis. I am also part of CVS Health. I represent the retail sector of CVS Health, pharmacist by trade, district leader. I manage 23 CVS pharmacies in the now Cincinnati area. I was in Phoenix prior. I do a lot with vaccination, so as part of the vaccination COVID project in Phoenix when it launched, both the in-store and out-of-store clinics. And then I also am part of the Pride CRG as well. And then I do a lot of my efforts around advocacy as well. So I was part of the Black Caucus of State Legislators and spoke on their panel just recently as well. So definitely want to promote health and equity as well as diversity and inclusion. My superpower, I would say, is to try to be everywhere at once.
Excellent
So
job.
I'm sure you guys can definitely agree with that. With everything what we're doing is we're just very thin in our lives, and just trying to be everywhere and meet everyone's needs, I definitely would say is a superpower that I have and one that I also strive for as well.
All right, thank you so much. And I think as you can see here from the experience of this group, I think both from our CVS Health friends as well as from our Marriott team members, we can hear a lot more about the challenges that we are seeing with frontline workers, hourly workers, and some ideas that these esteemed panelists have. All right, let's start with why it matters, right? I think if you think about it, I think it's pretty obvious to everyone here in this conference the reason inclusion and diversity matters. It's not because it's just good, but it's also good for business. That's why many of us are here. That's why many of us are corporate sponsors, right? So we often talk about a customer-centric lens from a business perspective. So we surveyed about 4,000 retail customers across the US, Canada, and the UK over the last few years to kind of understand the true sentiment of what do customers think about when they shop, right? And we saw here that a lot of shoppers, a lot of customers really would switch if a retailer committed to inclusion and diversity, right? We actually did some voice of the customer research, and customers told us that when they shop for a product, they are actually looking and thinking about what does it actually mean, and they are associating themselves with the promise of the brand identity in terms of inclusion and diversity. So I think when you are in a customer-facing business, as many of us are, and many of your companies are, I think it's very important to think about why this matters, because ultimately you will be turning off customers if you are not thinking about this. And I think what we found interesting in our research was I don't think this was just a marketing ploy. Right? I think customers very clearly said they do not want to see inclusion and diversity just in marketing. They want to see it across all parts of the business. Everything from products and services that a company sells, advertising, which is about how you sell it, touch points where you sell it, and of course the people who are there frontline with the customers, which is the workforce. And most of them are frontline workers, most of them are hourly workers. And I'll just give a few examples. I think if you think about it, I think products and services is fairly obvious to us. One example that resonates with me is I think what kind of Nike did with kind of the hijab for Muslim women, closely partnering so that you can actually make sure that you are creating barrier-free entry to sports. And it was beautifully done by Nike, where they actually partnered with the Muslim community to create what a hijab would look like in an athletic context. Right? And then if you think about advertising, so many great examples. If I think about touch points, one example that came to mind when we were doing this research, what I think there was a UK retailer called Home Bargain that actually decided to take a quiet hour every Saturday morning. So what they would do is for essentially customers in the spectrum who come to the store, they actually turned down the music for 1 hour every Saturday morning. They actually went down and lowered the voices in the public address system. So they could actually, customers could actually experience what it is like to shop in a quiet environment if that is what mattered. Right? So I think we're starting to see companies really take this in a much more deeper way. But today the focus we're going to do is really around what does it mean for the workforce. We are a professional services company, so we do a lot of surveys, we do a lot of research. So when we then look at what does it mean for the frontline workers, I think for most of us, I think the concept of frontline workers came to our collective conscience during the pandemic, right? So for many of us who are not there, unlike the teams here, right? I think the collective consciousness came about when the pandemic, when we realized kind of the importance of frontline workers. But I feel like now everything is kind of done, people are back to normal, but some of the challenges still remain when we actually think about what does it mean for frontline workers. So what you can see here is some of the challenges that our frontline workers are facing. And when we actually then go into an hourly versus a salaried employee context, I think as I mentioned at the beginning, the challenges are quite unique. Everything from like scheduling, right? Just the fact that you get a job actually decides whether you can actually pay your bill that month or not, and the frequency in which you get the job, right? The impact of scheduling it can have on your work life. And I think as Shante, I think as you were mentioning in one of your calls, sometimes the best way in which they can consume information is what is available on like notice boards in the locations in which they work, right? So as we think about ERGs, as we think about the work that we do, I think we're dealing with, as I said before, like majority of the US workforce that might just have legitimate barriers and challenges in even understanding well-intentioned efforts by ERGs. So with that in mind, maybe I'd ask each of you, just in your daily work, as you think about as an ERG leader, what are some of the challenges that you see, especially for LGBTQ employees in frontline roles, hourly jobs? Maybe we'll start with you, Justin.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. I think I have a unique job where I have kind of a hybrid. So I have the ability to work in a corporate setting away from the hourly worker. And then I also get to go into a lot of the pharmacies as well as managing 23 of them, where I do get to see a lot of the hourly workers. And I think as we think about the inclusion of specifically LGBTQI plus individuals, in an hourly setting, it is one unique challenge is being able to meet them where they're at. So in a corporate setting, you have a lot of time, you have a lot of availability, you can schedule a meeting. In an hourly colleague, such as working in a pharmacy, you're really just clocking in, clocking out, and you really don't have a lot of time to engage in extracurricular activities such as an ERG. The other challenge that you face with an hourly colleague is the safety concern. So, it's the self-identification, it's the ability to say, yes, I am a proud, gay member or whatever you identify as, put that in a registry for your work, and then hope that they have a lot of that safety for you back as well. I think those are some of the main challenges that I see. Shante?
So, a great question. And so thinking about, even in our preparation of this question, what are the right answers? And so the question says, what do you see? So taking off that corporate filter, right, and saying, what are the challenges? For me, in the role that I play, both in serving our clients, but also serving as a leader in our ERG, it's the looking at the business, right? Looking at the business, what corporations want to do in order to be attractive to diverse talent, right? But not only being attractive and getting the people in the door, but retaining them. And so companies are busy making money, making strides, following policies, lobbying, all of that. But again, it's the talent, right, that's doing the work. So for me, the challenges I see aren't necessarily challenges, but having that voice of representing our colleagues, representing the frontline workers, the salaried workers, and then also looking at the business needs and opportunities and meshing those, right? Because the priorities aren't always the same. And so for me, in short, the challenge is trying to meet both. How do you, as a representative of a community, showcase to your company that, hey, these challenges, these concerns of the diverse talent that is doing the work that you want to maintain, how that translates to hitting the bottom line for organizations. And so that's kind of the challenge for me, if that answers the question.
And I think that is essentially also, I think, the opportunity space where I think as we go through the next session, we'll kind of explore ideas, and hopefully all of you can walk away with some ideas, and we'd love to hear from you as well in the last 15 minutes or so of the session. Over to you, Thomas.
Perfect. Well, I think in the hospitality industry, we are extremely susceptible to high turnover rates. And Marriott is very proud to offer a myriad of benefits to our LGBTQ plus population. So it's making sure that those associates know the second that they walk in the door. And the hope is that they stay with Marriott. They see the benefits of working for a company like us who offers these great pieces for them. So it's dealing with the fact that we're looking at turnover, but overcoming that by making sure we're giving them the information the second that they come through the door. And we also talk about the challenging structures, or the challenging structure of scheduling as well. Yeah. So often, I think traditionally we think of associate resource group events as in the evening after work. It just so happens that half of our associates are clocking in at 3 o'clock to work a night shift, or they're working overnight. So how do we reach those people that maybe have an atypical work schedule? And thinking of work schedules, what is typical anymore? So something to think about in all those pieces.
Is there anything unique that any of you are seeing as we think about kind of franchised workers? Because if I think about, quick serve restaurants, even potentially even in hospitality, we are seeing a whole scenario where not only are frontline workers and hourly workers different, but they're also part of like franchisee operations. Is there anything that you see, Thomas, that is interesting or challenging that you would say?
Yeah, I think Marriott is known for having very consistent standards and you know what you're going to expect, whether you're staying at a Ritz-Carlton hotel or whether you're staying at in a Loft hotel or a Fairfield Inn. So it's making sure that those associates understand that this is woven into the fabric of our company, that we are celebrating them. This is part of Marriott's culture. So again, making sure that we're offering that up the second that they walk through our door, but for lack of a better term, standardizing it so they know that is the expectation of working for a company like us.
All right. Any other challenges that any of you would like to add?
One thing that I would add is what is perceived as professionalism, right? Walking into an organization, once upon a time, having white, blue, and pink hair was unheard of from a corporate leader, right? And an inclusive and diverse
Yes. Yeah.
environment. I need some Starbucks.
You're good.
Okay. So with that, is that okay now, right? How do you have those conversations with senior leadership to help them identify someone coming into your space as their authentic self then translates into better service, retention of amazing employees, and then how that translates to the consumer, how that translates to clients. I think that's a challenge. Many companies are focusing on that, but I don't know if any company has yet kind of solved that mesh of having that amazing employee show up as their authentic self without any question.
Well said.
Yeah. I would just add to that. I think there's one big factor that changed the life for everyone, and that's COVID. Yeah. If you would have asked this question, 5-7 years ago, I think we would have a different perspective of what our hourly colleagues want and need. And now it's just totally different. They value different things. They value being home. They value the relationships. They do value work, but I do think it's a little bit of a hybrid. And speaking of hybrids, you have the hourly colleagues that are coming into Marriott or coming into pharmacy and working those potentially abnormal jobs, but you also have hourly colleagues that are working in the digital space as well. And so how do we intersect and meet their needs as well in representation?
And then,
No, I was going to say for sure, I can agree completely.
And I would just add to that, again, once upon a time, walking into a job, I'd research it, but it would be answering the questions because you want the company to want you. And in interviewing people now, they have the questions for me, and it's almost as in, okay, you don't have this, this, and this. Thank you very much. And they walk away. So it's almost that switching of the future employee doing the interview and setting their expectations. So to your point of a majority of the workforce now having these desires for inclusion and diversity, it's that our corporations looking at that change. So not only having a logo on a bottle or a can or what have you, but also again being that organization that someone wants to be a part of.
Exactly. So I think what we'll do in the next couple of minutes is just walk through how do we solve some of these challenges, which is kind of the section as we move in. So this is an interesting word, omni-connected. When I first said that word, I was like, oh my God, my boss is already can connect with me completely. I don't think this is an intention is to do 24/7 connectivity with my boss, right? But I think the notion here is when we talked about what do employees want? I think they want experiences where they can relate to each other, where they can relate to their leaders, and they can relate to their organizations, right? And in that sense, their jobs. So when we kind of distilled what employees want, we framed it, these 5 themes came along, which I think are reflecting what we just spoke about, right? I think employees want to be seen. They're empowered to bring their whole selves to work, right? They want to be heard. Right? So there is a sense of autonomy, there is a sense that their views matter, their opinions matter, they want to be heard. And I think in this day and age where I think technology is moving very fast, I think everybody wants to learn. Yes. I think this intense desire for everyone to feel like I don't want to be left behind, I want to learn, is a continuous theme. And I think it closely ties back then to advancement, right? I want to learn because everybody wants to advance at their own pace, their own way. So there is a need to feel advanced. And then most importantly, Justin, to your point, how do they feel safe, right? How can they be truly authentic and also feel safe, right? And then therefore, as we think about this, right, I think we're continuing to see here that significant portion of employees place a premium in wanting to be seen. Right? I think that's kind of a given. I mean, 94%, you might as well say it's close to 100%. Everybody wants to be seen, right? The challenges we see is that not every frontline workers in retail often feel like they're heard, right? So we're seeing necessarily in this whole hearing notion that, how many, only 19% feel like their company hears for them and cares for them. And then the same thing here, right? If corporations and companies would actually invest in learning, a significant portion of employees would have said that they would stay longer, right? One of the reasons they switch is obviously because they don't find the opportunity to learn. And a very correlated to that, which I think is advanced, is that I think they want employers to take a lot more accountability for learning and also making sure that they can learn. And then ultimately, I think the notion is that, I still think the percentage, which is 1/3 of employees feel safe today or feel like they're able to experience a deep level of trust, which just continues to reveal where the opportunity is, because the remaining, 76%, 60, whatever the number is, 100 minus 34.
I like that. Can't go wrong.
Right? Is the opportunity space. So I think as we go into this, we heard the challenges from all of you. Maybe it would be interesting if we start with each of you to say, how are you in your organizations, ideas that you've seen implemented and suggestions you have as we think about how do we want our LGBTQ plus hourly employees to be seen, heard, learn, feel safe, and advance?
Yeah, I guess I can start with my own story. So, growing up, I was always told to separate the difference of you and your work versus who you are and who you go to bed with or who you identify with. I remember being told that, if you are portrayed in this manner, you won't get hired or you won't get that promotion. And I really took that with me as being a pharmacist. And what I found was that when I was not my authentic self, I didn't identify with not only my colleagues, but I didn't identify with the patients that I dealt with on a daily basis. I was lucky enough to meet my partner 8 years ago, and he really has helped me become a little bit more comfortable with who I am at work. And I can tell you that I wouldn't be on this stage today if it wasn't for somebody like that urging me to be my authentic self. I say that all because I feel like that I wouldn't even, like I said, be on this stage, be able to meet Shantae like we did if it wasn't for me being my authentic self. And so what I would say is, one thing that you can go home with is do your best to be your authentic self, show up for work, show who you are, and be that light for other people. The way I do that now that I have been open and honest with my team about who I am and who I love, I feel like I thought that it would be a barrier for me, and it actually has opened up a lot of doors. So much so that I would say one thing, I'm wrapping my mind around several stories that come to mind, and one of which happened just this past week when I met a pharmacist in a store, and I met her, and I didn't really know her that well. And I showed up as my authentic self, and I was talking about me and my partner and all these other things. And she had made mention about her going to, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, so she had made mention to going to Kings Island, and I was like, oh, that's Pride Night. Me and my partner will be there for Pride Night. And then coming back the next day and actually seeing her at Kings Island and seeing the difference between her from her workspace, where she felt very uncomfortable with who she was, to seeing her at Pride Night with her rainbow earrings and her makeup all done up and everything. It's just amazing for her to come back to work that following next week and say, hey, I have a leader. I have somebody that I can look to towards leadership that supports me, not only for who I am, but who I love as well. So I think that's one way to really be able to show and take some of the things that we're talking about today into your everyday life. And then the other thing is not necessarily always the outward portion, it's the inward portion as well. So if you see right now, I have a Pride logo, CVS Heart logo on my shirt. I have several of those, and when I do retail visits in my pharmacies, I have just a little logo that says, "Hey, I hear you. You are seen. I fully support you." And that's just one of those little mini things that we can do and carry with us every day, where we're not out and proud all the time, but we actually have something that says, "Okay, I'm a supporter as well."
Got it. Thank you, Justin. I think it's a great example of how I think just the examples we set ourselves can slowly start to create the change in conditions where it might be challenging. Shante, I know you spoke a lot about some of the harder challenges.
Yes. Hopefully I still have a job after. So a couple of things. So one, Justin, your story for many employees, so I'm fortunate enough to work in a role where I manage a group of people, and many times when they're frustrated with things that maybe have nothing to do with the company, if you're in a role where the government maybe decides many things for you, sometimes people want to walk away. But in asking them to stay, it's always about a person, or it's about certain things. So your story, if that person should ever want to walk away, I can guarantee you your interaction will stick out in their mind. And so
Thank
you
you.
make a difference all the time,
Thank you.
obviously, but literally those are one of those things. So thank you for that. But in looking at the list of things, for one, so with our partnership with Marriott and with Accenture, taking the content that we record and knowing that for our frontline employees, they don't have the hour and a half break or lunch. So, okay, taking the content and whittling it down, so we got diversity, right, and whittling. Put that in my little section here. Whittling it down to a point, to content that they can actually watch on their shortened break maybe, or at a leisure, or when they're in breaks between patients and things. So thinking about others and how they can take into content and then making it readily available. So putting it for our company, everyone doesn't have access to the same portal. So putting it not only in content space, time frame for something that works for everyone, but in a place that they can access maybe outside of that. So plug for our healthcare equity series on YouTube. If you search for CVS and Accenture, you'll see something else that we've put. And then just the feeling safe for our employees at CVS Health, having name tags that give our team members the opportunity to say, this is who I am. Many times people will approach us, and if they don't see outward some things they feel comfortable in being, what's a nice word? Not so nice. The name tag says, that's not me. Don't bring that to me, but also says that I'm happy working here, and this is a safe space for me, and my employer supports that. And then, so we talked about our scene.
Yeah.
The fact that we're even having this conversation, the fact that my leaders didn't push back for me to be here, that they are celebrating me being here and making internal accommodations for that. So I think I've hit a couple of them.
Thomas?
Perfect. Well, I think I'll speak Marriott specifically right now, but the hospitality industry as a whole, we welcome the world through our doors every day. So we are so lucky to have a workforce that also exudes that sentiment. So I think that's incredible. Something to keep in mind is looking at the relationship between the hourly manager or the hourly associate as well as the manager. A very significant number, and I need to get the exact figure, I'm thinking on the fly here, but a very significant number of our leaders, whether they be in our hotels or at headquarters, started as hourly workers themselves. I'm one of them. Gosh, I'm breaking the technology. But I started at the front desk and worked my way through to where I am now, and it's that idea of continuously growing. But it's knowing that you have a leader that very well did your job. They know how to check somebody into the hotel. They know how to ready a room. They know how to cook a burger to Marriott standard. So knowing that sort of creates that culture, and we really play off of that culture. Most recently, we've been focused, as the two of you just talked about, on storytelling, reinventing our people brand. It's this fantastic new platform. It's called Be, where people are telling their story, and it's real associates. We are capturing them in their day-to-day work. They're talking about their partners. They're talking about pride celebrations. They're talking about things, and they're making it just as regular and normal as it should be. So I think having those true stories, showing real people is paramount.
I could see you flipping a burger.
You like that? I'm telling you, pouring a beer, done. I'm an ops guy through and through.
All right.
Makes my heart beat.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to add on to that. So, for CVS, we have what's called Heartbeat, and it is about those storytellings. It's about being able to see representation and see yourself, not from just an hourly lens, but also to see yourself as an hourly colleague on the corporate lens as well. I think that's super important. The one thing that we didn't really touch on is being heard.
Yeah.
So I think that one is just huge. Being able to be heard and being responsive. So if there's anything that I would say you can take back to your companies is to make sure that it is a two-way conversation. It should not be just coming from the top down, but really sitting down and asking, what is it that your hourly colleagues are wanting and needing to feel all of these things in this space, seen, heard, that they're learning on a constant basis, feeling safe, advanced in their career. Learning is another good one. So learning to not everybody is out. Not everyone feels safe. Not everyone comes to work and feels like their home life is what it should be. And being able to learn who you are through some of these work ventures, I think, is just as important as well.
Got it. I think we spoke about some of the unique challenges in terms of just scheduling, time available, where frontline workers even kind of do their daily jobs, which is not in corporate offices. Right? Anything interesting you've seen in terms of, I think your point is very valid, right? How do we make sure communication is condensed and made bite-sized? Right? Because people, an hour is a significant portion of their income, right? They don't want to watch an hour recording. Any other thoughts on how do we get kind of messages out into, let's say, properties, into stores, pharmacies that you have seen?
In our conversation today at the CVS booth, we have popcorn in the morning, stop by. With that, many of you mentioned that you were here in different capacities. So there were trainers, there were people from HR and different things. And so little things like using your pronouns when introducing yourselves in those conversations, in your training classes, things like that, helps people feel heard when you don't always hear from them. But by doing that, that's that little thing that says, I am in a safe space. It's the wearing of the lanyards. It's using the correct terminology. If someone says, my pronouns are these, utilizing them. And then again, introducing yourself as well. But something else to keep in mind, I was thinking hourly. Many people in conversations always assume, oh, you work for CVS. That means you work behind a counter. And that's great. I don't happen to work behind a counter. But with that, hourly employees aren't always what we assume. So hourly roles take very important roles within our organizations. And I think that's something to remember as well. Every role matters, but not every role is heard. And so to your point, putting things in context to where everyone can hear them, whether it's condensing the time in which they're provided, maybe it's putting it again in break rooms, maybe it's sending it out. It's being creative for what works for your organization.
Any other?
I was just going to say, part of, certainly at our properties, and we do at the corporate office as well, we start the day, or the shift, I should say, because there are 3 different shifts in the day. We start with a daily huddle or a daily lineup where we're going through, VIP arrivals, we're going through happenings in the area, integrating what's happening with our associate resource group, talking about health resources that are available to the associates and putting them in the context of the LGBTQ plus community is paramount as well. It's bringing that conversation in, and there are so many touch points throughout the day where we're able to do that. So, while the scheduling may be off a little bit, there are opportunities embedded in the workday.
I think the key takeaway here is that I think instead of thinking about this as like a separate thing we need to do, I think the key takeaway is how do we integrate it into existing touch points so we kind of maximize frontline workers, hourly workers in terms of their spend. And all of you gave creative ideas on like how you can do that. Everything from shortening training to thinking about this in daily stand-ups, thinking about it in the daily huddles, right? And how do we kind of do that? One thing I want to probably explore is I think this notion of like what you brought up, Shante, which is this notion of what is perceived as professionalism. Right? And I feel like we've made progress as a society in many parts over time. Anything that any of you have ideas on how you have addressed this with even leaders in your own organization and getting those leaders on board? Any things that come to mind?
Everyone knows I always have something to say, so I'm just going
Please.
to pause.
Yes, go
and
for it. Go for it.
Anyone that knows me.
Yes. Yes.
So one cell, something that maybe you can take back to your organizations when we're talking about hitting a certain group, ethnicity, age group. LGBTQIA, there's not one group that is not within our rainbow, within that alphabet string. So if your organizations are saying, hey, our focus today is on youth, well, hello, LGBTQIA. If they say it's not about who you love, but who you are, hey, our trans community, there's not one group, ethnicity, religion, what have you. So just thinking about that when you have to go to your leadership teams. But with that, you brought up Nike and the hijab and different things like that. So for our leaders, the Crown Act in Arizona was recently passed. And so if I can't get my leadership team to do it because it feels good, there's that legislative piece. We're driven by legislation, right? Just thinking about what that ask is from your leadership and then kind of tying it there. But sometimes it's chosen from the heart, right? Sometimes it's chosen based on budget or initiative, and then just choosing from there.
I really think, I love that example, Shante, of course, but I love that example, period. What we focus on is empowerment of our associates and making sure that they know that they have a managerial team that supports them. Hourly workers are at the front line of all of our business, and oftentimes, I shouldn't say oftentimes, but there are challenging situations where they may be the recipient of an angry guest or something that is so beyond their control, the guest is taking it out on them, though. What is appropriate? What is a true guest concern versus what is discrimination? What is inappropriate behavior demonstrated by a guest to an associate? So we're so focused right now on training and making sure that our associates know that they are empowered to stand up when the behavior is not appropriate. So
valuing the customer and the employee.
Exactly.
And then going back to
Exactly.
And our idea is take care of the associate, and the associate will take care of the customer. That's what our founder, what Marriott is built on.
Justin, anything you would add to this?
Yeah, what I'll just add is I think it's definitely a boots on the ground approach. I mean, I think it's not going to necessarily always come from the top down. I think it's going to be somebody that's going into all of these locations or wherever it is and saying, hey, this is our CRG, ERG. Hey, this is what we represent as a company. Hey, this is what we stand for. And being able to poster that within the break rooms, within your buildings, within the walls. Online, shouting it from the rooftops. I think that's super important. And to your question, we all come in different shapes and sizes and colors and all of those things. So making sure that the representation is there so that people, when they are looking at those things, see themselves in that as well.
Got it. Thank you. I think one thing is, I think a disproportionate number of the hourly workers are relatively young.
Yes.
Right? So if I looked at a survey, I think it was like 70% are less than 30, which I'm not. Right? So I think as we think about the demographic shift also, are there things that, and I think it goes back to your concern, I mean, it goes back to your point you made earlier about how some of our younger employees' perceptions of work and what they value changed. With that lens in mind, any suggestions you have? Knowing that the workforce is relatively young, maybe their priorities of work are different.
Yeah, what I'll say to that is I think, when we initially talk about diversity and inclusion of the LGBT community in earlier spaces, I would say that it was just the fight to be there, just to be seen, right? And that's okay for some of the older generation or some people that have been in this fight a little bit longer. What we find is with the newer generation, and this is something that Shante and I talked about a little bit as well, is how do we meet both at the same time? So the younger generation is more, I am who I am, and that's who I am, and this is what I'm bringing to the table, take it or leave it. And that's totally different from the two generations that are there. So how do you intersect the two? And I think that's kind of one of the challenges that we really talked about is how do we, as a LGBT, bringing diversity and inclusion back to our communities, back to our businesses, include both at the same time without excluding either one of those.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that goes back to what you said about being heard. So most of our companies have surveys, right? And looking at some of the comments, you can just somewhat get a grasp of who's filling them out and their viewpoints. Even though it doesn't have an age, you can kind of get that. And for many people, certain things are non-negotiable. And for others, it's like, well, if you could, that kind of thing. So you kind of get an understanding of where people are coming from. But I can only, I'm doing this too. Yes, I
birds
felt
of a feather
myself.
here, Shantae.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So with that, for me, it just goes to finding that commonality, right? We're more alike than we are different. And so trying to see where people are coming from, because we all want the same thing at the end of the day. We want to be seen and not only accepted, but valued for who we are. And that value takes different shapes for different people. And it just kind of sits down to just listening sometimes. There's not one thing that I've personally been able to do that works every time, but it's starting from that place of curiosity and just having conversations.
And I'm piggybacking off of a comment you made earlier, Shantae. This is an employee's market right now. They are shopping us just even more so than we are interviewing them. So it's making sure that we're putting our best foot forward and being aware of the fact that they have a savvy at age 22, 23 that I don't know if I'll ever have. So pretty cool.
That is very cool.
I think one thing that I think it was one of our younger employees at our company, right? Exactly, Justin, to your point about they felt comfortable being who they are. They also spoke about how are we as ERGs also helping them advance their career.
Yes.
Right? So maybe we can touch a little bit before we go to questions on some ideas around how do we help our members of the ERG advance their careers.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. I know I'm standing between you guys and happy hour, so bear with us. A few more moments here.
Yes.
But what I will say is it's super important to have, like I said, somebody who you look up to, somebody who is bringing you along. And, I'm so thankful for the chance to get to meet Shantae, a few months back. At a community engagement events, and we shared that we were part of the like-mindedness that we wanted to push through in the Phoenix area. So she was able to get me on this stage and be more involved in some of the ERGs, and I need to do the similar thing with some folks in my community as well, in Ohio where I'm at currently. So just like what she did to me is bring me along and help me advance my career and be more vocal about who I am. I need to do the same thing with that pharmacist that I talked about a little bit earlier and bring her along with me as well so she can bring up somebody else so that it's a chain reaction versus a cascading.
Okay, thank you.
I would add to that again, kind of that conversation thing. So one of my younger team members mentioned tuition reimbursement. So it's like, okay, what school do you want to go to? And they were like, well, actually, there is this training course that I want to go to learn to be more inclusive. And it's like, duh, I should have thought about that in the role that I'm in. But just thinking outside of the box, it still applies. The mindset is here, the mindset is there, but the goal is the same. Yeah. So finding out for the individual what it is that is important to them that's going to keep them at our company, and not only keep them in the role, but where they're able to bring their authentic self, because if they're bringing their authentic self, they're going to do the best job. And so that for me was a takeaway of not making assumptions, but asking the questions to see what their direction is.
Yeah. I think that one theme I think you're highlighting the importance of what might seem obvious is, are we actually taking the time to engage in those conversations and approaching them with a sense of curiosity? Yes. Right? Because I think while we might see problems as unsurmountable, that very conversation might open up some avenues for solution that might neither party might have contemplated coming in. Yes.
Absolutely. And I always say about our associate resource group, I joined the group less than a year after I started with Marriott, and I have formed my most trusted mentors and friendships through the Associate Resource Group. And I think what's so unique about these communities is, oftentimes the people that you're getting that advice from or the mentorship pieces, they're coming from all different ends of the company. I have, trusted mentors who are general managers of our hotels, that are VPs with, they're running our brands. There's just a multitude of input, and it's wonderful to have that supervisor-employee relationship. But, taking it out of that day-to-day workplace context, our friends and our connections that we've made through the ARGs, those mentorships offer just something a little bit further, because you're at totally different places oftentimes in your career, in totally different scopes or arenas. So I think that's just the gift that keeps on giving within the space. It really
Yes,
is.
well said. All right, I think I didn't say my superpower. My superpower is getting us moderating on time.
I love
So,
it.
all right.
Get you guys
So
on
I think we were supposed to reserve 10 minutes for questions. I think we have 10 minutes and 50 seconds. All right, yes, please. I think a mic will come to you.
So I'm just wondering, especially from a retailer frontline perspective, as you alluded to, there's staffing challenges and things like that. I work in HR, and I work for the company that manufactures the BinaxNOW COVID test. So it's been a little tumultuous for us in the past few years. And the opportunity to take, I know it's a little bit different with manufacturing, but folks from the production line, to have the ability to interact and to connect and all those type of things. And when you're talking to your business leaders, that's production time that they're being removed from the floor, they're being removed from, filling a prescription. They're not there to welcome a guest. And so maybe what are some thoughts or what you have to share with leaders about, in the world that we live in, it's so quantitative in nature, and so what's the return on our investment about having someone away from their particular role for a certain amount of time? As we continue this, with it being exacerbated by various different forces that affect our workforce, what are some things that we can do outside of communication or different things like that that are, little touch points, but to have them continue to feel that connection and the ability to kind of, come together more, create those community building type scenarios?
I'm happy to start with that. When you're looking, first of all, love Abbott and AbbVie, amazing. When we're looking at, sort of that side-by-side leadership, it's not so much taking people out of their current position that they're in, but making sure that they have a mentor, a manager working alongside with them. I think the way that we learn, and I don't think this is specific just to Marriott, it's by having someone standing with us along the way. I'm looking at my friend and colleague Jeff right here, who's a general manager now in operations leadership. But Jeff is running the hotel, but he's also making sure that the breakfast is taken care of in the morning and guiding his associates to serve the way it should be, and leading by example because he's standing with his people. And I think we have to get out of this mentality of, this line person is going up to, the executive office, they're gonna be off the floor for an hour to have this conversation. It's kind of the reverse of that. The leader should be going down to the desk and working side by side with that associate, saying, and integrating those pieces of the conversation into their leadership style. That's my, God, here I go with the microphone again.
I know the heartbeat. I would just quickly, and to add to that, the importance of pouring back into individuals. I don't have the statistics, and I don't even have the math to get the statistics, but I do know that we are in a mental health crisis, and with that, if we don't pour back into ourselves, and with that, our colleagues and those that we work with, there won't be anyone to do the job, and therefore the quality of the product is subpar, and then there's that dollar and cents that you can tie. So for me, if we don't pull people out to give them that time, that interaction, they won't be there, and then you're starting over with other people. So maybe there's a math formula that we can kind of create to show value in that.
Yeah, one thing that we like to talk about at CVS Pharmacy and CVS Health is the power of and. So how can we engage our hourly colleague or not have them off the floor, but how can we integrate those two things together? And I think that's the great power of and is how can we do both at the same time? How can we have the productivity as a company and also have them engaged and feel included as well? One thing that we do is just simple as a screensaver, right? So we have a screensaver that pops up and it has the QR code on there that talks about all of the CRGs and all of the groups that are involved in. So I think that's just a quick, simple suggestion way to do the and, because you're not necessarily taking them off of the floor, but you're also engaging them in an inclusive way as well.
All right. Yes. I think we have a few.
Hi.
Oh.
So this might be a question specifically for Thomas, but we have a fair number of unionized workers, and I know that a lot of hospitality workers in a lot of cities are unionized. Do you find that there's a difference between unionized hourly workers and non-unionized hourly workers in terms of their engagement?
I have to be honest, I think Marriott's culture is so rich that even those who are affiliated with a union, they're first and foremost Marriott associates. And I say this wholeheartedly, they're proud to be Marriott associates. And, when we talk about the union element, and it's interesting and I could go on and on and on, but after the Starwood acquisition, we saw a lot more union folks coming on because Marriott, well, we existed in very heavy union cities. Our biggest hotels chose not to be union because of the fact Marriott offered such incredible benefits. So from the outside looking in, no, I do not, and outside looking in, not being at the property level anymore, I do not see a difference. And when I did work at property, well, there were certainly union elements and there was that organized piece there. I still go back to my idea that our people are Marriott associates first and foremost. So I've never noticed a difference. It's all about serving the guest.
Right, thank you. I think we have a question here. We have two questions here, right?
Oh, hi. So I have more of, statements than questions, and I probably have some unpopular opinions. So I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way. My name is Sarah Clausen. My pronouns are she, her, and I work for L3Harris Technologies as a manufacturing technician. I am hourly. I work in one of the highest production value programs in the IMS division, and I'm the L3Harris Pride ERG site leader at the Mason location. I used to use both of my 15-minute breaks every day to work on the ERG. I don't have an office, and I have to search diligently for an office space just to work in. I cannot do any of my work inside the lab. I had to get my own laptop just to do work because we're not automatically provided one. As an ERG site lead, the duties listed are to organize events, delegate tasks, answer emails and in-person questions from members, participate in meetings, perform outreach services. The list goes on and on. One of your solutions was to whittle down content into short bursts and make it readily available. And my response to that is it kind of hurts me that there's such an emphasis put on productivity that hourly employees cannot be given the same amount of time to be as truly involved as salaried employees or to participate in ERGs. Part of the mission of employee resource groups, at least at our location, is not just to inform, but also about professional development opportunities for employees and networking opportunities. And that can't really be provided in a 5-minute video or module. Or putting things in a break room is a good start, but it doesn't allow for two-way communication. Just making awareness about your ERG is not the same as creating alignment within your company and within your ERG members.
Right. First of all, I think thank you for your comments and thank you for the statement, because I think that reflects the reality of what we spoke about in the beginning, and I think we have to acknowledge that reality, and none of the solutions we offered essentially addresses all of them. So first of all, thank you for that, and thank you for speaking up. Thank you. Yes.
You have the answers and you're holding out on it.
Yes, exactly. So give us a few solutions.
Okay.
She's like, let me go.
Yes, she's ready.
In my opinion and experience, the only way to truly integrate your hourly employees is to create a charge code or paid time to have these conversations. Everyone's avoiding it, but if any company is truly invested in their hourly employees that want to participate in an employee resource group, then that investment cannot just be on the surface level. It has to be real and financial and a tangible investment.
All right, thank you.
And if I could just And if I could just comment really quickly. So first of all, again, thank
Yeah.
you for your transparency. And so thinking back to my comment of whittling down, so we take the same amount of content and we just put it in smaller chunks so that people can digest it when they have time. But again, that doesn't answer your question about having that time. So just wanted to clarify that they get the same amount of content just in smaller chunks to allow them to watch it. But I will say that those concerns are not unique to your organization, and I can't speak for the current company that I'm at, but I can say I've been at other organizations where we're not at the point where CVS is at, and it took a long time for CVS to get here as well. I worked for a company that was bought out by CVS, and the company before didn't even have CRGs, so that was an eye-opener to me. And with that, there has been struggles along the way, but I can proudly say that as an employee pushing it, and again, in a way that I still have a job, it has brought about that change, and it has been an employee-led change. So I would love to have a discussion afterwards to hear more about some of the solutions that you've come up with.
All right, thank you.
And I would just like to add to that as well, since I kind of am, like I said, in the hybrid model of working in a corporate space as well as the hourly space as well. It's the, again, like I talked about before, it's the power of and. So how can we deliver those bite-sized moments, which is the same content for a 5 or 10 minute break, and also deliver the same content in a resource page like we have as well, so that you can see the whole content. To your point, yes, we definitely need to be able to be more involved with that, whether they're, to her point, union or non-union, whether they have time or it's paid time. Like, we do need to add those spaces and have that inclusion to make sure that everybody feels equal as well. So thank you for that comment as well.
And in addition to that, it's the joining. So we're up here today because our CRGs came together, Accenture, Marriott, CVS, and said, these are things individually that we are doing great, but collectively we can kill it. We can change the world. And so with that, that's just one quick takeaway. Use an opportunity here to network and find others who are with CRGs and work on those challenges.
Yes.
Over to you, Tom.
I was going to say, I can't top any of that, so that was perfect. I love it, but thank you so much for your comment.
All right, we have a few more. Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
So I work for a company called Sonepar. We're the world's largest electrical distribution company, and I too work with a lot of frontline workers who half of our workforce works in a warehouse. And so I will offer that a couple of things that we've done is in this year, because I've learned a lot in this last year, is to bring the events to the warehouse. So we'll pull a food truck up to the warehouse so that the warehouse associates can come in, get there, participate in the activity. We've done that for Hispanic Heritage Month, Black History Month, that sort of thing. So just an offer for ways to engage those associates. My question is around in that warehouse, or like a small branch that's in the middle of nowhere, and we know that we have someone that requires a restroom facility change, an inclusive restroom space. Have you had instances in maybe some of your older facilities where you've had to make those changes so that your associates and or customers have an inclusive space to use the restroom?
I was just going to say, in our property, we have what's called a PIP, a property improvement plan. Those elements are now written in. So I recently just lived in Nashville for a little over a year, opening a hotel where it is written into any new build contract that goes to our owners that there has to be those facilities available to folks who need them. So that's very specific, which is awesome. But then also Marriott has very succinct property improvement plans too, where those elements are written in as well. So we're very proud of that.
All right, maybe we'll take one more question. One more. Yes, quick one. All right.
Thank you very much, all of you. I work at John Deere, and one of the things that I struggle with trying to engage our hourly folks is the concept of a safe physical space. So our our salaried employees, we can do it from our remote desks or in the office with headphones on. So it's very easy for us to engage with content. When you're talking about holding like an event, even if it's during the work hours, if you can actually get that space, it's much more public in a factory or a space like that. Any thoughts about how you create that safe space within a larger environment for the wage employees?
All right, one of you gets to answer that. All right,
Well,
go
we know
for
I
it.
can't go quick, so that
All
has
right,
to be one of
go ahead, Travis.
Yeah, so what I'll say is, to your point, there's lots of things that we're working through. So again, if I'm thinking about just us in the pharmacy, we have the break room, we have the manager's office where they can watch that content. We also have the digital content as well. And then some of the things that we're talking about going forward, and some of the things that we're already doing as part of some of the things that I've been doing with Shantae, is being able to be out in the community. And not even just saying like, hey, I'm here, but being involved in Latino Heritage Month or Black History Month in the community, being part of Pride Month. We're involved in several prides across the U.S. And I think about our involvement can always be bigger. Everything can always be bigger and better. So to your point, we definitely want to have those inclusion spaces to keep improving because we never want to settle with where we're at.
All right, thank you, Justin. And you told us you will get us to happy hour, so there you go. All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Justin, Shantae, Thomas. And thank you, everyone, for coming. Please use the opportunity to talk to us. We're happy to share our examples.